the rubber game of a 3-game series between the Marlins and the Dodgers here in Los Angeles. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Wednesday Night Baseball. Along with Joe Morgan, I'm Charlie Steiner. The Dodgers lead the National League West by 1/2 game. Only a game and a half separate all 5 teams. And when you consider that the Dodgers have a rookie manager, an interim general manager, all the turbulence in preseason, all the noise being made now is coming out of the bat of Gary Sheffield.
Well, I like the way the game is being played now, and that means fewer home runs, fewer run productions by mediocre players. The great players will always separate themselves away from the field if you give them the opportunity. And that's what Gary Sheffield is doing now. Take Monday, 0-0 ball game. He hits a home run. They win 1-0. That's what a superstar does. Kevin Brown, the other superstar, pitched a shutout. Last night, they're trailing. He hits a home run to get them back into the ball game. And then later in the same game, he drives in another run. So the superstars will always produce if you give them the opportunity to do so.
And in the National League East, nobody's running away from the pack quite yet, and that gives the young Florida Marlins a lot of confidence, especially now with their pitching staff coming around. We're going to see their ace tonight in Ryan Dempster.
Well, they have 3 young guns, as they may call them there in South Florida. They have Ryan Dempster, A.J. Burnett, and Brad Penny, all of them potentially great starters. And Ryan Dempster has done a great job, especially against the Dodgers. In 15 innings, he's only given up a couple of runs. This guy is a superstar in the making. But like a lot of young pitchers, they have great stuff, but they need more experience. He's gaining more experience all the time. A little inconsistent at times, but he has great stuff.
Last year, Ryan Dempster, the youngest National League All-Star. We think we've got a pretty good pitcher's duel tonight. The veteran Chan Ho Park will be going for the Los Angeles Dodgers. We've got Wednesday Night Baseball coming up next. The Marlins and the Dodgers, and Prentice Wilson, Charles Johnson, Sean Green, Gary Sheffield, and it's all next.
ESPN's Wednesday Night Baseball is brought to you by Smooth Bush Beer and Easy Drinking Bush Light.
Charlie Steiner and Joe Morgan here at Dodger Stadium in Los Angeles on a rather warm evening, characteristically warm this the early part of May. Gary Sheffield, talked to him before the game. You'll be hearing a lot from Gary tonight. He's also the poster child this week for the ESPN The Magazine. Terrific story on Gary. And, of course, his former teammate, Charles Johnson, held a press conference to see his agent immediately next to Scott Boras before the game. A lot of controversy about the clause in his contract as to whether or not he will be able to move on if the Marlins are unable to secure a new stadium at season's end. So you take a look at the National League West, and just a game and a half separate the Dodgers from the Padres at the bottom. I guess, Joe, there's a couple of surprises. One, the Dodgers playing as well as they have when you consider that Adrian Beltre hasn't played a lick. Paul LeDuc is on the disabled list, so is Andy Ashby. But maybe an even bigger surprise, the San Diego Padres and how well they've managed to hold up so far.
And just think about the San Diego Padres. Ricky Henderson has been the leader. He's been leading off and getting on base and doing a job for them.
You saw a quick look at manager Jim Tracy a moment ago. Of course, this is his first year at the helm. And you talk to the Dodgers, to a man they all praise his ability to communicate. In fact, Alex Cora, who had been the starting shortstop, getting the night off tonight. Later in the day, or earlier in the day, in fact, Jim Tracy called Cora into the office and said, "We're just going to give you the night off tonight. Don't worry, you'll be back in the lineup tomorrow." And so there's a greater sense that they are talking to one another in that clubhouse than perhaps years past.
Yeah, but I think if you're Castro, you have to be panicky to think, well, every time they take you out of the lineup simply because you're not hitting very well. Cora's not hitting very well. So when you're taken out of the lineup, you wonder if you're ever going to get back in. So I understand his concern.
The Marlins, on the other hand, nobody's running away in the National League East, although the Philadelphia Phillies certainly a surprise, but the Marlins continue to hang tough, and that pitching, as we talked about in the open, really is beginning to come together now.
Batting seventh, the playing shortstop, number 14, Jeff Reveille.
Let's take a look now at tonight's starting lineup for the Florida Marlins, and John Bowles has put it together.
And what you find unique about this lineup is the third, fourth, fifth hitters and the sixth hitters in this lineup all hitting 300 with 20-plus RBIs. That's a lot of production out of the middle of the lineup. And really, the second baseman, Castillo, is really not hitting well. He's been stealing a few bases, but once he starts to get on base a little bit more, because he's hit over 300, I mean, he's the guy that can really ignite this offense.
And the Marlins are just one of 4 teams or one of 3 teams in the National League, Arizona and Milwaukee being the other 2, that have 4 guys in their starting lineup with at least 20 RBIs.
And there you see the age of the pitchers on this Marlins staff. A.J. Burnett, Ryan Dempster, 24 years old. And look at that, Brad Penny's only 22. This is a very good starting rotation, and they only get better. Dempster and Burnett and Penny, they gain more experience every time they go out there, and they become better pitchers every day that they take the mound. So they are 3 superstars in the making.
The Canadian-born Ryan Dempster in search of his 4th win of the season, and he'll be facing Chan-Ho Park tonight. Park making his 8th start of the year.
And there you see his numbers. Pretty good. The walks to strikeouts, 43 strikeouts to 17 base on balls, very good. The 192 opponents average against him, that's very good. Chan-Ho Park is a guy that, like Dempster, like these other young pitchers, he was supposed to become a superstar. And last year he had an excellent season. It looked like he was going to become that superstar this year, but he's had some back problems and, you know, struggle. But once he gets fully healthy, I tell you what, he's one of the better pitchers in the major leagues.
In his last outing last Friday at Chicago, he left in the 7th inning with 2 on and nobody out. Struck out 8 and didn't walk anybody, but he suffered some back spasms. The 2 runners that he left on base would eventually come around to score. The Cubs would beat the Dodgers 4-0, but they were certainly concerned about his back. But on this warm, almost humid-like evening here in Los Angeles, that should not be an issue.
And let's take a look at the defense behind him. We got a whole different left side of the infield. Dave Hansen is over at 3rd base. Jeff Rebele is playing shortstop in the place of Cora. So this is a little different lineup that they have with Chan-Ho Park tonight.
First base,
Alex Cora getting the night off tonight. He was called into the office by Jim Tracy before the game and told him, "You're just getting tonight off. Don't worry, you'll be back in the lineup tomorrow."
Did I call him Alex? That's his brother.
But Joey was the brother.
This is Alex.
And
I said Joey, I'm sorry.
And that's Jeff Rebele, and this is Luis Castillo to lead it off for the Marlins. Castillo hitting just .216. He's 25 for his first 116.
But as soon as he gets on base, he does make things happen. And he's leading the league in stolen bases.
Has 10. Last year, he led the majors with 62 stolen bases, and the first pitch is under the knees. It's 1-0. Larry Young is the home plate umpire, the crew chief. Eric Owens on deck, Cliff Floyd to follow. As you see, way in on the grass at 3rd base, Dave Hansen. Had a one-hop base hit into right field. So Castillo with the leadoff hit.
And that's what even faking a bunt will do. It draws everyone in. First baseman way in on the grass. The second baseman even cheats a little bit to get the drag bunt. And it makes it easier to hit the ball through the right side. Because that ball was hit almost straight away second base. But because they were so shallow, they did not have time to react.
Chad Kruger's got a pretty decent throwing arm, but he has a mighty tall order with Castillo at first base. Eric Owens came over just before opening day from the San Diego Padres. They brought Matt Clement to the Marlins and sent Mark Kotze over to San Diego. Castillo not going, and Owens lays off.
Well, last night they started the ball game exactly like this. They had 5 straight base hits in the first inning. Castillo single, Floyd single, Wilson single, and Lowell single after, so they're starting off just like they did last night.
Castillo not going, and Owens takes all the way. 1 ball, 1 strike, just underway. It's a gorgeous night in Los Angeles. A late arriving crowd, to be sure. 1-1 to Owens. Off the glove of Park, so he's just got 1 play, and he just does get Owens by a half a step.
Actually, I think that would have been a double play had he not touched it, because Grzelcyk had moved over toward the bag, and you'll see him behind him here. Watch. He's moving over to get this ball, and he thought he was going to have a chance to make a double play, yet when it went off the glove of Park, he was only able to get one.
So Castillo is at second base, and here's Cliff Floyd. 35 for his first 114. And Cliff has been hot of late. Ten home runs, 27 RBIs. On 2 hops to Karros and 2 gone. Castillo advances to third. There's 2 out.
Batting fourth, number 44, center fielder.
That'll bring up Preston Wilson. In his last 14 games, Preston is 20 for his last 55. And he's raised his average to .328.
And last year, he was the only player in Major League Baseball that hit 30 home runs and steal 30 bases. Whereas in the past few years, we've had a lot of guys do it. Last year, he was the only player to do it.
The rap against him, of course, is that he strikes out too much, although with 30 strikeouts so far this season, he's actually on a pace that's considerably less than it was last year when he fanned 187 times. But even though he's striking out a fair amount, his on-base percentage is .394.
I remember Richie Allen used to say, an out's an out, whether I pop up or hit a little weak ground ball or a strikeout. I think most people view it a little differently. The more times you put the ball in play, of course, the more chance you have of getting a base hit. But what Richie was talking about is he didn't cut down on his swing just to put the ball in play and hit a weak ground ball someplace. He was still trying to drive the ball, and that's what I see with Preston Wilson.
And Wilson's on-base percentage of .394 is excellent. And that got a piece of Larry Young's headgear.
This is a pretty good pitch to hit. A fastball about belt high, and he gets the bottom part of it. He gets the catcher and then gets Larry Young.
About 2 weeks ago, Larry Young, as a base umpire, was hit by a thrown ball, and it takes some stitches. The crew chief. 1 and 2, 2 out, top half of the first. Castillo leading off third. Wilson lays off, and the count falls even at 2 and 2.
Well, Chan-Ho Park has taken a long time. You see him, Wilson tries to call timeout. He raises his right hand, but umpire Larry Young doesn't give it to him because Chan-Ho was about to start his delivery.
And now the 2-2. Well, we'll do it again. Mike Lowell is on deck. And Lowell is off to a terrific start for manager John Bowles. His 4th year as the manager of the Marlins, who began the night 5.5 games behind the Phillies. 3 games under 500. That's Castillo leading off third base with 2 out in the top half of the first. And Wilson is struck out, and the inning is over. No runs and a hit. Goodwin, Gruzelanek, and Gary Sheffield will hit for the Dodgers when we come back. Chan-Ho Park retired the Marlins on 1 hit using just 12 pitches in the top half of the first. And now here's the Dodgers starting lineup, Joe.
And the key guy here is Sean Green in right field, hitting behind Gary Sheffield, because if he starts to produce, that'll allow Sheffield to keep getting good pitches to hit. But if he has problems and starts to struggle a little bit, then they're not going to pitch to Sheffield.
And Green has been struggling. Just 5 hits in his last 36 at-bats. There's Sean, and the pitcher tonight for the Florida Marlins, 23-year-old Ryan Dempster, making his 8th start of the season.
And you can see there, look, if you look at those numbers, they're not as consistent as you would like, but that's what young players give you. They'll give you a great game one time, a mediocre game, and then a poor game. But Ryan Dempster last year pitched great against the Dodgers.
First pitch to Tom Goodwin. First ball swinging into the left field corner. And in foul territory, Cliff Floyd makes the catch. Gives us an opportunity to look at the Marlin defense.
And Gonzalez at shortstop and Castillo two pretty good players there. And again, Castillo's the key to this ball club. If he can get on base, he'll make things happen. But Alex Gonzalez, one of the better shortstops in baseball. It's a very good double play combination.
Castillo has made only 2 errors all year, and Alex Gonzalez bouncing back from just an awful year last year. Now here's Mark Grudzielanek, 32 for his first 110.
I think he had 5 home runs in the first 20 or so. He was hot.
Well, he's cooled off a little bit, and that's because he partially tore a ligament in his right thumb. So he has done virtually no batting practice in the last 2 weeks. And that right thumb is very swollen and sore. Had a good night last night to Grudzielanek. Had 3 base hits, and here's the 1-1.
Well, you can see in that swing right there, Charlie, he didn't roll his hand, his top hand to get it through. He kind of dropped it underneath. Looked like it was protecting his thumb. Watch how his right hand goes kind of underneath here. See, it's more of a push. He pushed it out there rather than throwing the barrel of the bat at the ball on that particular pitch.
The right thumb is heavily taped. Here's the 1-2, and
you can see it again. It's more of a slap. He is not swinging. And I wonder if a guy has a bad thumb, you know, why would he play simply because, take a look here. Watch, this is more of a slap. See right there? That's not a swing. That's a slap. And he was swinging the bat so well. And what happens when you play with a bad thumb or a bad hand, you develop bad habits.
The 1-2. Lays off. It's 2-2.
This game is tough enough to play when you're 100% healthy. But when you have problems, especially with your hands as a hitter, it is very difficult, you know, to play. And again, the problem you have there is sometimes you get in the bad habit of just slapping at the ball.
And the 2-2. Fooled badly, and there's 2 gone.
Batting third, number 10, left fielder Gary Sheffield.
Well, all is forgiven. Well, all is forgiven on opening day when he hit the game-winning home run.
Exactly. You hit a few home runs, you won a few ball games for the team, and people kind of decide, well, he may not be as bad a guy as we thought he was. But I look back and say, what if the Dodgers would have traded him? There's no telling where they would be now. And the fact is, you're not going to get someone back like Gary Sheffield if you trade him.
I'll tell you, talking to Jim Tracy before the game, there is no bigger fan of Gary Sheffield than Jim Tracy. And of course, Jim had to come in and clean up some of the mess created by Gary in spring training when he was asking to have his contract extended. Still had a couple of years left on the deal, and of course that didn't play terribly well. But Sheffield came in. He apologized at a team meeting to all of the teammates. He was certainly embraced, and then a game-winning home run on opening day certainly erased a lot of ill will.
But he has been swinging a bat great lately. I mean, a lot of clutch hits, not just home runs, but home runs in great situations. On Monday, he hit the home run to win the ball game 1-0. A great pitching performance by Kevin Brown.
And not only is he a slugger with his 10 home runs, 23 RBIs, 8th in the league with a .343 batting average. He's 3rd in the National League with a .460 on base percentage. We go around. No, sir. That's first base umpire Andy Fletcher.
Shows you how strong he is, because he did swing at that, but he was able to stop it. Watch this. He actually swung at that. See that? He did swing at it, but he was so strong in pulling the barrel back that he tricked the first base umpire. He didn't get a chance to really view it.
Now the 3-1. Count goes full to Sheffield.
Beautiful pitching there by Dempster. 2-0. He hit the outside edge with a fastball. 3 balls, 1 strike. Watch, he hits it again. Watch Charles Johnson. That's a strike. Beautiful pitching there by Dempster.
Wasn't bad framing by Johnson either. But Sheffield works out the walk. And now let's go to Bill Pito, our first update of the night. Bill?
All right, Charlie, thank you very much. The Phillies and the Astros. Bruce Chen on the hill for the first place Phils. Houston down 5-3, and Lance Berkman gets a hold of 1. Jeff Bagwell a 3-run shot in this game. Berkman a 2-run shot. We're all tied up at 5. And the Mets and the Rockies, as Mike Hampton goes up against his former team. He's been great with Colorado, 4-0. Strikes out Mike Piazza. 2-0 Rocks, bottom 4.
Well, Mike Hampton likes the public school system in Colorado. Now here's Sean Green.
Hey, I have to say one thing. Maybe he can pitch in Colorado.
Hampton off to just a great start up there.
Well, that school system puts your mind at ease, and it just takes all the pressure off.
You can buy the school system. 2 balls and no strikes to Sean Green. He's been struggling of late. Just 5 hits in his last 36 at-bats.
And that's another reason you're going to see Sheffield walk a lot. As I mentioned, unless Sean Green starts to hit with some power, they're going to walk Sheffield a lot more often. And that's why his on-base percentage is so high.
And that's the predicament that Jason Giambi has in Oakland.
Yeah.
And the Dodgers would dearly like to find some pop to protect Sheffield in the lineup. But now Dempster falls behind 3-0 to Sean Green with Eric Karros on deck.
We'll get a look at Tracy and see if he lets him go. I think he was going to swing there.
So after 2 outs, back-to-back walks.
And I would like that if I was a player. I mean, you're struggling a little bit. You get a pitcher in the hole. You know, your manager can help you work your way out of slumps sometimes. Letting you swing 3-0 or putting runners in motion for you. Just doing a lot of things to help you. And I think a lot of times a slugger like Green, you let him swing 3-0.
Now Eric Karros off to somewhat of a sleepy start. 30 for his first 118 with 5 home runs.
He always gets off to an average start, but he always ends up with his 95 to 100 ribbies.
And 30 or so home runs, and he'll hit between 250, 275 every year. 2 on, 2 out in the bottom half of the first. And now Charles Johnson is going to go out and chat with his young right-hander.
That's why they wanted Charles Johnson here. Here's a guy that, you know, knows how to handle his pitching staff. And they have all these young pitchers on the pitching staff that are learning how to pitch. And a lot of times the pitchers, they'll have their own ideas about what they want to do, but they should really follow Charles Johnson. I mean, this guy has caught, you know, world championship pitchers. He's won a World Series. He's caught in the 7th game of a World Series, so he has a good idea about what he's doing back there.
Sheffield at second, Green at first. Good speed on the base paths, and Karros is behind 0-1.
And I think that was what Charles Johnson went out there and said, you know, he's going to be sitting dead red here. We've got to throw him something else. He called for a slider the first time. Dempster didn't want to throw it, but Johnson went out and explained to him.
See what he does on the 0-1. Tailing away, it's 1-1.
And remember, he had walked Sean Green on 4 pitches in a row, so he wanted to throw a fastball, try to get out in front. But Charles Johnson knows if you start Karros out with a fastball, you might be behind 3-0. So very smart pitch there to start Karros off with a slider.
Karros with 5 home runs. Swinging badly and missing badly. It's 1-2.
See, when a pitcher is struggling with his control, a lot of hitters will sit dead red. They'll look for the fastball. And so you see that's what he was doing. He was sitting on a fastball both times he swung and missed. And so you have to throw him something different. You don't have to throw a strike with it. He hasn't thrown a strike with any breaking balls. He's thrown 3 pitches. All of them have been out of the strike zone. But because the hitter was looking for a fastball, he was able to get away with it.
So it's 1-2 with 2 on and 2 out in the bottom half of the first. Way up high. Overthrew it.
Well, he wanted to try to finish him off with the fastball after he showed him 3 sliders. But again, you will do that a lot of times if you're a young pitcher. You will try to overthrow.
So on 2-2 after sliders and fastballs, what do you expect?
Well, you have to throw him another slider. That's the pitch that he's been able to be effective with.
Instead, it was a fastball inside and high, 3-2.
Well, he hasn't been able to throw a strike with the fastball. This has to be a slider then. See, because he hasn't thrown a strike with a fastball in 6 straight pitches.
And so Sheffield and Green with decent speed will get a head start. Full count, 2 out in the bottom half of the first. Here they go. Here it comes. Missing outside. Ball 4.
Well, I think he made the right pitch. You had to throw a slider. I mean, you have to go with it. You can't throw the fastball for a lot of reasons. You know, if you throw a fastball and he hits it out of the ballpark, you're down 3-0. This is not the worst thing that could possibly happen to you, having the bases loaded by, you know, pitching through the middle of this lineup. Now you just have to reach back and make some good pitches.
Third baseman Mike Lowell with a brief conversation with his young pitcher. Ryan Dempster last year was the youngest National League All-Star. He's making his third career start against the Dodgers. He's given up just 1 run and 7 hits in 15 innings. Lifetime, and it's drilled into right center field. And Preston Wilson comes on to make the catch, and the inning is over. Charles Johnson will hit in the second inning. Lowell, Johnson, and Millar scoreless after 1. Well, the Marlins wriggle out of some trouble. Bases loaded, 2 out, and Dave Hansen, first ball swinging, pops to center field in the first inning, and the threat against the Dodgers.
And my point there was, if he walks the bases loaded, they still have to get a 2-out hit. He was able to get out of it, so not the worst thing walking Sheffield, Green, and Carrolls. You do not want to consistently do it, but, you know, either one of those guys could have hit the ball out of the ballpark, and you could be trailing now.
Mike Lowell, he missed a couple of games after being hit by a pitch by Mark Leiter on the elbow the other day. So Lowell back after missing 2, and Charles Johnson awaits on deck. Charles Johnson held a press conference before the game as Lowell pops it into short right field. And there's Eric Karros, one gone. There's a clause in Johnson's contract which allows him out of the Marlins if the Marlins are unable to get a new stadium. And right now it's a very iffy proposition. He addressed his contract situation before the game and said it'd be the only time for the rest of the year he would talk about it.
I think we all want to see the stadium happen. And then when we hear it not going to happen, I think we all go through that little roller coaster thing. So when you add the media to it, it becomes a big-time distraction. So I think as a player, I know I'm going to be here for this season here. I know I'm going to be here all year. So I'm just going to go out and enjoy it, have to see win ball games, not really think about this whole process. And that's my whole point of being here today.
You know what I find interesting there? He says when you add the media to it. I wonder how the media found out that he had this clause in his contract. You didn't read it, did you? So someone told the media. So, and I guess my point is, I don't know if that's supposed to be a threat to the Marlin team, or is that a threat aimed at the fans to vote for the stadium to be overall. In any case, I think it's a lot of ado about nothing.
Hooey?
Yeah.
A lot of hooey.
Yeah.
Here's Kevin Millar. He's getting the start at first base tonight. Derek Lee is in the midst of just a season-long slump, and so manager John Bowles has given Lee the night off, and Millar, a role player, gets the start. Meanwhile, back in Florida, there is still a lot of conjecture as to whether or not the Marlins will get a new ballpark. The owner, John Henry, of the Marlins has said if there's a line drive to short, we'll pick up that story, of course, later in the ball game. A 1-2-3 inning for Chan Ho Park. Scoreless after an inning and a half. Dodgers hitting instructor Jack Clark sitting next to Gary Sheffield in the bottom third of the Dodger order, hitting in the bottom half of the second inning. This Sunday night, the Astros and the Reds, the Killer Bees, invade Synergy Field. John and Joe, of course, will have the game on television. Dave Campbell will join me on ESPN Radio for the Sunday night game of the week, presented by Nextel.
And I'm wondering, does Ken Griffey Jr. come off that day, or is it the next day?
I'm not really sure he's necessarily ready to go anyway.
Yeah.
I saw him in San Francisco about 10 days ago, and he was still stretching, and he was not in any great shape. And those hamstrings just don't go away. Jeff Rabelais is the hitter, 11 for his first 35, and he's getting the start tonight as Alex Cora gets the night off. But to finish up the story with the Marlins in Florida, John Henry, the owner of the Marlins, has said if he can't get a new ballpark by 2005, he won't be able to afford to keep the franchise afloat. Rabelais with a base hit into right field leading off the second inning. And so now Governor Jeb Bush, whose brother and father are notorious baseball fans, apparently have been lobbying the good governor of Florida to try and see what they can do to have at least a referendum down there to raise some money to build a ballpark. Chad Kruder is the hitter. Switch hitter. How appropriate it is that a swinging Chad. And what a play by Castilla, and what a double play!
I have seen some real acrobatic double plays the last couple of years. Tejada and Velarde in Oakland, and this one is just fantastic. As I said earlier, these two guys are very good at the double play. But watch this. I mean, this is a tough play. The feed is tough. Right there. Now he turns, doesn't even find first base, and gets rid of it quickly, right on the money. That's a tough play just to catch it. Look at that. Alex Gonzalez all over the place. Nice play. It doesn't get much better than that. It's turning it at second base.
The toss from Castilla off balance, the throw from Gonzalez off balance, and it was perfect. And now Chan-Ho Park, not a bad hitting pitcher. 4 for 16, has a couple of doubles and an RBI. And he swings and lofts it foul down the right field line. Gave it a pretty good ride. So Florida's swinging Chad bounces into a double play. Chad Kruder. Swing and a miss. It's 1-2. Castillo and Gonzalez turn in a magnificent double play. With 2 out here in the second inning. Looped into short right field and foul.
Tells you that actually Chan-Ho Park's not a bad hitter. I mean, he just threw the bat at that ball. He's got his own bat. Look at
Very
that.
impressive.
Yeah, but he threw the bat at that slider. I mean, that's pretty good bat control to be able to do that. Watch this. He just throws the bat at it. I mean, that's pretty good control there.
That was Ichiro stuff. Those are not bad numbers.
Those are good numbers, actually. Anytime a pitcher hits 200, a starting pitcher, it's like a everyday player hitting 300. So that's 181. That's like hitting 290. That's a good job. Fastball in, and he jumps back out of the way, and he had back spasms in his last start.
The 2-2. Dempster strikes him out. Second strikeout of the night for Dempster. We are scoreless after 2 from Dodger Stadium.
ESPN's Wednesday Night Baseball is brought to you by Holiday Inn Express, the smart choice for travelers who want to stay smart.
Well, we saw just a spectacular web gem in the bottom half of the second inning. That double play ball. Kruder was robbed by Castilla, and then Gonzalez turned and made a spectacular throw. And it will be Alex Gonzalez leading off for the Marlins in the top half of the third inning.
That's the way it used to be in baseball. You make a great play, and you were up that inning.
And there's Luis Castilla. Backhanded throw.
He said he wanted to go behind it. He wanted to flip it behind his back, but he caught better of it.
Alex Gonzalez already has a leg up on comeback player of the year. Last year, he couldn't have had a worse season with just 200, 7 home runs, 42 RBIs all year long. And he had the lowest batting average of any regular everyday player in Major League Baseball. But he has turned it around this year. Already has 14 walks this season. Noteworthy because he had only 13 all of last year.
Well, that should be a sign of patience and experience. He's gaining more experience on when to swing at certain pitches and when to lay off. And that's why I think Preston Wilson's strikeouts are down a little bit. He was more patient to that at bat, but then it finally caught up with him when he threw the slider out of the strike zone, meaning Chan-Ho Park, to get him out in the first inning. But He has been a lot more patient.
The 0-2 to Gonzalez. Well, the bat went a lot farther than the ball did. Now let's go to Bill Pito. We've got another update.
All right, Charlie, as MCI WorldCom takes us to Fenway. Manny Ramirez, 2 RBIs, including a home run in this game. Hit by Jose Paniagua. A couple of batters on each team hit in this ball game. Bases loaded. Next man up, Troy O'Leary. Early in the game, Ramirez and O'Leary went back-to-back with home runs. But here, O'Leary grounding into the double play. And Seattle goes on to win by the final score of 10-5.
Man, that was awful.
Ryan Dempster fouls it back.
I mean, I could, you know, when it's up around a guy's head like that, that's awful.
You know, there are more hitters being hit by pitch balls this year than you think. Of it back 20 years ago, you just got the sense that they were throwing more. But in fact, this year, hitters are being hit by a pitch ball once every 101 trips to the plate. Go back to 1980, and a batter was hit once every 245 trips to the plate. Well, which raises the question, why is that?
It's very simple, Charlie. The hitters today dive into the plate, whereas the guys before went straight back at the pitcher and they could go down. But when you start into the plate, you can't get out of the way. That's the problem. Once your body starts in, you're locked there. Whereas if you go here, you have a chance to fall back. Your balance is better. So it's really very simple. I mean, it's a different hitting style used today than there was 10, 15, whatever years ago, because, you know, hitters didn't dive in as much as they do now. But that's the style of hitting. It's not so much the individual. It's the styles that the hitters use now. And I think that was perfected because so many pitchers were throwing the ball off the plate outside, sliders away, and then off the plate outside. So the hitters just started going to get that ball. And when they did that, that became their hitting style, but they're also locked in with and they can't get out of the way.
Now let's watch Luis Castillo square to bunt, and it's 0-1. You've got also another issue at play, of course, is that you've got, whether it's Mo Vaughn or Jeff Bagwell or Craig Biggio wearing the elbow pads and so on, that they're more willing to take a hit.
Well, I think it's not so much they're willing. I think the reason is that that's their hitting style and they don't want to change it, and they do need some protection. Remember, Bagwell had his hand broken several times because he dove in, and so he wears that padding to keep from, you know, if he gets hit on the hand again, he doesn't want to break it. So it's just that combination of the hitting styles now as compared to pitchers trying to take back the inside part of the plate again.
Here comes the 1-1 to Castillo. It's 2 balls and a strike. We were talking before the game in the old days with Willie Mays. You vividly remember he vacating the premises, and he was gone, and the helmet came out of the sky about 10 seconds later.
Well, a lot of guys were like that. I mean, not like as pronounced as Mays with the helmet staying there, but a lot of guys, that's what they do. They would go down, and you see very few hitters go down now. You see them get hit, you know, because they're diving in. They don't go down, you know, like fall backwards where their, you know, head gets out of the way. So because it's the hitting style, and it's not the fault of anyone. I mean, it's just the hitting style. Pitchers were always away before. Now the pitchers are trying to take the inside part of the plate back, so you're going to have more players get hit because they're still diving toward the outside corner.
Now the 2-2 to Castillo. Instead of going down, they're moving in toward the plate.
And they're locked. Once they move in, they can't go back out. I mean, that's the problem. You're diving in, you can't go back out. Whereas before, you were striding almost straight back to the pitcher. That was the way the hitting styles were taught in those days. But now you have the guys, they're all diving toward the plate rather than going straight down the line.
Now here comes the 2-2 from Chan-Ho Park to Luis Castillo in the top half of the 3rd inning. Chan-Ho with a nice play, and Castillo can run and makes it a whole lot closer than it could have been. It'll be the top of the order for the Dodgers in the bottom half of the 3rd, featuring Gary Sheffield. The top of the order for the Dodgers in the bottom half of the 3rd against Ryan Dempster, who wriggled out of a bases-loaded jam in the 1st inning. And Tom Goodwin, who flied to left field in his first at-bat. Communication even between innings.
Yeah, this is just before Dempster came out in the series. He's throwing the slider. I think what he's trying to say is he wants to use the slider in and out. In normal cases, you have a right-handed hitter there, and he puts the slider down. He's going to say throw the slider away. But sometimes you can be effective if you start the slider right at the hitter, and then it breaks on the inside corner. So maybe he's saying I want to use it both sides of the plate.
3 balls and no strikes to Tom Goodwin.
Yeah, but he's having problems with his fastball. I mean, he is overthrowing his fastball, and he's consistently high with it.
And Goodwin, who's walked only 7 times all year, takes a strike. It's 3-1.
And he took a little bit off of that fastball to get it over the plate, and maybe that's what he needs to do. Just tone it down a couple of miles an hour and throw strikes with it.
Looks like another fastball on its way. And he's on his way into right field for a leadoff single.
Well, you'd rather have a guy get a base hit than to walk him. Make him do something. Make him earn it.
Second baseman.
So even if you have to give him 2 straight fastballs and take a little bit off, you still accomplish the same thing.
So Tom Goodwin, one of the fastest men in baseball, with 6 stolen bases in 7 tries. And it'll be quite a little competition because Charles Johnson has thrown out in his career 41% of would-be base stealers. Here's Grzelcyk, who struck out in his first at-bat. Well, they're going to keep a close eye on Tom Goodwin.
Tony Womack, Eric Young, and Goodwin, 3 top base stealers.
Goodwin faked, took a couple of steps, and then returned to first. It's 0-1 to Grzelcyk. Now keep in mind, Charles Johnson this year has thrown out 9 of 17 would-be base stealers, 53%.
And you have to give the pitcher some credit for helping him. See Dempster keeping an eye on Goodwin, changing his time of release. He holds it a little bit and sometimes just come down and go quickly. That'll give your catcher a shot at throwing somebody out.
The 0-1 quick toss. Of course, there are 2 theories. One, the slide step, and then there are others like Greg Maddux, who says I'm just going to go out and pitch my game and not be worried about the base runners.
Well, you know, that's Greg Maddux can do that. Everyone else can't.
The 0-1. Foul ball. And no balls and 2 strikes.
Greg Maddux does not allow a lot of base runners normally, so he doesn't have that problem. But I have seen teams take advantage of that fact, you know, especially if they get to second base, just take off, because Greg is concentrating on making his pitches. But obviously he's been successful doing that. I wouldn't recommend that to other pitchers.
Rookie manager Jim Tracy. Tracy and Mark Grzelcyk, of course, go back together to the Montreal Expo organization. Tracy interned, if you will, under Felipe Alou, and then was the bench coach here in Los Angeles under Davey Johnson until he got the full-time job in the offseason. Grzelcyk and Tracy have become very close over the years. Here's the 0-2, and there goes Goodwin. Ball outside, throw, and he is out at second base.
That was a bullet by Charles Johnson. Even though the throw was high to second base, it got there in plenty of time, and he picked the right pitch to throw on. I'm shocked that Goodwin went 0-2, because on 0-2 they usually throw a pitch up and away, and there it is, up and away, and Johnson fires it, and they tag him out right in front of the bag. It wasn't right on the bag, and watch, he tags him before he gets to the bag. That's the key. And Johnson, you know, did a good thing, fastball up and away.
10 out of 18 would-be base stealers have been gunned down. The latest victim, Tom Goodwin.
Normally your base stealers will not steal 0-2.
Grzelcyk fouls it off.
You know, I'm just really, let's take a look at Charles Johnson. See, he comes up, he takes a little long, he takes his time on this to make a strong throw, but he still gets him, and you can see he says, well, I got you.
Again, the 2-2, and Grzelcyk lines up base hit into right field. Now let's go to Bill Pito with an update. What you got, Bill?
Charlie, we have some situations developing in Colorado. First, a hockey game, Game 7 with the Kings. A former King, Rob Blake from Ray Bourque, 1-0 after 1 in favor of Colorado. That's Game 7. And the Rockies, Colorado's baseball team, Larry Walker, with Mike Hampton going up against the Mets for the first time. And Hampton trying to go 5-0 is now up 3-0. That's Walker's 12th of the year.
The Canadian Larry Walker with the home run, and starting pitcher tonight for the Florida Marlins, 23-year-old right-hander Ryan Dempster, also a Canadian. And LA has become a hockey town all of a sudden. Gary Sheffield fouls it back. Sheffield walked in the first inning.
And you can see Gary Sheffield doesn't get cheated. I mean, he takes a good, solid, hard swing all the time. But that tells you something about him as a hitter. He's able to pick the ball up so he can stay in position to make that hard swing.
And yet he walks so often. 101 walks last year. And this year, Sheffield has walked 24 times and struck out only 13. You would think the big sluggers, the numbers would be reversed, more strikeouts than walks. Instead, with Sheffield, many more walks and strikeouts. One and two.
Well, Sheffield has a very quick bat, so he can wait a little longer, and he doesn't have to commit himself so much. And you can see he has some protection on his front arm, especially the elbow. There's a big pad there to protect the elbow, and that's where you can really get hurt, and put you out for the longest period of time if it hits you right on the elbow.
That's exactly what happened to the Marlins third baseman Mike Lowell over the weekend, hit by a pitch by Mark Leiter, and he was forced to miss a couple of games. 1 ball, 2 strikes, 1 out, bottom of the third.
Well, you can watch even Sheffield. Watch where he starts. He starts in, but he is able to get out of the way. See, his balance is okay. He's not diving in. He's stepping in.
And now the 2-2.
Yes.
He went around.
Good slider from Dempster.
Right fielder.
Well, that's what happens. You come off the plate inside. He knows you're going away, so he goes out there to get it. And there's a slider right on the outside corner. Good pitch there by Dempster. See, Sheffield obviously went too far.
Dempster's third strikeout. And now here's Sean Green. Green walked in his first at-bat. He swings and misses. Nothing in 1.
That was the first time he's taken a little off of that fastball. It was more of a changeup. And Green was way out in front. See, a guy like Dempster who has a good fastball, the changeup is very valuable in that he can throw it a lot of times because the hitters are looking dead red and they'll think it's a fastball and jump right out there.
0-1.
And then you come back with a good fastball. So the changeup has been the weapon that he's gotten used here right here against Sean Green to get 2 strikes on him very quickly. The changeup made this at bat possible for Dempster to get way out in front.
The 0-2 with 2 out. Off the glove of Mike Lowell. And on his way to third base is Gruzelanek. And Gonzalez slips and falls, and now he has to run it back in.
That was interesting because I thought Gruzelanek could have made it even though Gonzalez, did fall down. I think he could have made it even if he wouldn't have fallen down. That ball went right out into no man's land there. And by the time Gonzalez got to it, I thought he could have scored. Now watch this. It's right off the glove. Now look at him. He's chasing it. I mean, he goes a long ways out there. He slides to get it. Now, I mean, he could have scored very easily. Now watch the runner, Gruzelanek. Now he comes around second. Look, he's not even close to the ball. When he gets to the ball, look at this. I mean, he could have scored easily right there.
And third base coach Glenn Hoffman made no signal at all.
Yeah, he wasn't much help right there. He wasn't waving him, and he wasn't stopping him.
And it's an error charged to Mike Lowell. It's just his second error of the season. So the Dodgers with their second threat of the night. And Eric Karras takes a strike on the outside corner, letter high. Karras walked in his first at-bat. First and third. And Karras is now behind 0-2.
I guess the thing to remember with 2 outs, I mean, you always should try to score the guy if you have any chance to score him, because very rarely are you going to get a lot of 2-out hits. But right there, like you say, Hoffman, I don't think he was sure. So if he's not sure, then Grzelcyk wasn't sure, and that was the problem there. It wasn't a lack of communication there.
There was no stop. There was no go. There was no nothing.
No nothing. Because he could have made it easily.
Here's the 0-2 to Karras. Did he go around? Oh. First base umpire Andy Fletcher.
That was interesting. Larry Young looked down at the third base umpire first.
Well, Larry took one off the mask earlier in the night.
And you can see he clearly checked his swing.
So Dempster trying to get out of the second jam of the night, but he's unable to do it on Karras' RBI single into left field, and Glenn Hoffman has to be feeling a whole lot better about life as long about now.
I'm actually surprised a little bit at that pitch. It was a fastball for a strike. I can understand the fastball off the plate inside. Now watch, this is on the inside corner. That's a strike. It's okay to throw him the fastball off the plate because they've been getting him out with sliders. So throw it off the plate and then go back to your slider. But made too good a pitch. And even though he was ahead 1-2, Karras was able to drive it in the hole.
That's being wild in the strike zone.
Exactly.
And so the runners, Green at second and Karras at first, and Dave Hansen is the hitter. Hansen first ball swinging in his first at-bat with the bases loaded and 2 out, and flied harmlessly to center field. This time he takes a ball. Hansen, one of 5 different Dodger third basemen this season. And all that's going to come to an end by this weekend when Adrian Beltre finally returns. Two balls, no strikes, and 2 outs. And the Dodgers have used Chris Donalds, Jeff Reboulet, Phil Hyatt, Hiram Bocachica, and Dave Hansen. And somehow they have managed to piece it all together. You take a look at Chris Donalds, though, as Adrian Beltre will be back on Saturday. What does Adrian Beltre mean to the Los Angeles Dodgers? A lot. Beltre had an emergency appendectomy in the offseason, and then the incision simply did not heal, and he had a terrible infection. Ball strike, 3-2, and lost about 30 pounds. So now finally Beltre is healthy again, and Jim Tracy is anxiously awaiting his return on Saturday. But meanwhile, the count is full, 3-2. Green and Karras get the head start. Foul tip, strike 3. The inning is over. So on the RBI single by Karras, the Dodgers have the early lead. The Dodgers with an unearned run in the bottom half of the third, and now it's the Marlins' turn. And tomorrow night at 7:30 Eastern time on ESPN. Does it get any better than this? The Eastern Conference semifinals, Game 7. Mario and the Penguins at Buffalo. The series all even at 3-3. Tomorrow night, 7:30 Eastern time, Game 7.
We've had a lot of Game 7s this year.
It's been great stuff.
Yeah, the Kings tonight in Colorado, and the New Jersey Devils. That's my team.
You like the Devils?
I like the Devils. Something about that mascot, the Devils. Actually, John McMullen used to own the Devils, and he's a close friend of mine.
Who isn't?
Well, he was a very close friend.
Eric Owens fouls it off to the right side. It's 0-1. Owens bounced out in his first at-bat. Well, McMullen was
owner of the Astros when I played there. He won a couple of Stanley Cups. Unfortunately, we couldn't win a World Series for him.
Well, they're still waiting for the first World Series down there in Houston.
We came close within 3 outs against the Phillies in '80 and had Nolan Ryan on the mound. I'd take my chances with that lead and Nolan any day.
And then the 1-1. And from Houston you went
San Francisco.
Uh-huh.
And then I went to Philadelphia and we played in the World Series against the Baltimore Orioles.
2 balls and a strike. So the Phillies would beat your beloved Astros.
Yeah, and then I joined them later. We were the Wheeze kids. Pete Rose was there.
All right.
Tony Perez, Mike Schmidt, Steve Carlton, Gary Matthews. We were older guys. Gary Maddox. It was a veteran team. I won't say older, veteran team.
Well, that was old. Here's a 3-1, ball 4. We have an update now. Angels White Sox game, and Bill Peto's going to tell us about it. Billy.
All right, Charlie. White Sox actually moving themselves
Left fielder, number 30.
out of last place. Jose Valentin, he went 4 for 5 in the game, coming through here in the bottom of the 9th. Off the base of the wall. Casey lost tonight, so the White Sox win. They're now past KC and out of last.
So the White Sox beat our company softball team tonight. Now Cliff Floyd. He has 4 career home runs against Chan Ho Park. And 7 for 18 lifetime. Breaks his bat and into short left field. There's Sheffield.
Well, breaking your bat doesn't always mean you can't hit it out anyway. We've seen Larry Walker hit home runs breaking his bat. And you can tell that he's very comfortable against Chan Ho Park because he has swung at the first pitch both times. And that's a good pitch to hit. He just got in on his hands a little bit, I guess, because it was a fastball out over the plate. And the first time up, he grounded to first base on a first pitch fastball. So he seized the ball very well off of Chan Ho Park.
Brings up Preston Wilson, who struck out in his first at-bat. Chan Ho has 3 strikeouts on the night. Now, everybody knows that Mookie Wilson is Preston's stepfather. What you may not know is that his godfather was an old teammate of yours, George Foster.
He's even got George Foster's like sideburns.
Kind of like his stance, too. And like George, a muscular fella.
If I was teaching anyone to watch anybody hit, I think George Foster would have been the guy that I would say, just watch him as much as you can.
There's a little Foster in that. In that stance, and here comes the 0-1.
And the great thing about George's stance, he was very quiet. He didn't move around a lot. He didn't do much. And just before the pitch came, he would just turn his front shoulder in a little bit, which got his bat into great hitting position. I tried to emulate it. I just couldn't do it. But if I was going to tell somebody to watch anybody hit, that would be the guy, because no movement, just let the bat do the work.
And that's exactly what Preston Wilson just did. Well, that was one of the most one-sided trades in baseball history, wasn't it? George Foster for Frank Duffy.
Yeah. Problem with George and a lot of guys in playing for San Francisco, they were always supposed to be the next Willie Mays. And it put a lot of pressure on them, including Bobby Bonds.
Frank Duffy was never considered to be the next Willie Mays.
No. No, I mean George when he was playing in San Francisco. And then Bobby Bonds, all those guys were, you know, Henderson, all those guys were supposed to be the next Willie Mays. And it was very difficult to play following a guy like Willie Mays. And Bobby Bonds, of course, played in the outfield with Willie Mays.
1-2 to Preston Wilson, with Owens the lead at first. Owens has 3 stolen bases on the year, and Chad Kruger has a very good throwing arm.
Watch out, the A's are on the move. The A's won again.
They're just not as bad as their record. 2-2. And Hudson wins his 3rd tonight.
Well, they have some good pitchers. You know, that's the key, that, you know, to turning something around. If you have good pitchers and you have 3 good pitchers and they have 4, I mean, each one of those guys can win 3 starts in a row, and you're right back in the race, and that's what it's going to take. If you do not have the pitching, you're not going to be able to put those long winning streaks together.
Well, the Dodgers have, of course, an outstanding rotation. Here's a 2-2 inside and low, 3-2. Kevin Brown, a 1-0 winner night before last. The former Marlin. Jim Tracy had a great line about Kevin Brown, how fierce a competitor he is. He doesn't go anywhere near Kevin the day that he pitches. Won't even say hello. Day after he pitches, he says hello twice.
Of course, the Dodgers are still missing Andy Ashby. He's on the disabled list.
He's not sure when he's going to be back. He's still struggling. Well, let's see if Owens goes with the Marlins trailing by a run. Yes, he is, and it's slapped foul.
And see, there's the difference right there in Preston Wilson. He cut down a little bit on his swing there. It wasn't that long, I'm going to hit a home run type swing. He just tried to put the ball in play.
And Preston has become one of those real video freaks. He is in the clubhouse before a game, and he is watching every at-bat on video. Already quite the student of the game. He's 26 years old in his 3rd season. And here comes a 3-2. There goes Owens. Foul tip.
A lot of people forget that he was one of the key players in the deal that sent Piazza to the Mets. He was one of the Mets' prize farmhands. And Florida probably would not have made the deal if they could not have had Preston Wilson included. So
the Mets sent 2 pitchers along in that trade, neither of whom has really made its mark. Eddie Yarnell, who's now in Japan, and Jeff Getz, who has not had so much as a cup of coffee in the big leagues. The 3-2 runner goes, and Preston Wilson continues to battle. He fanned 187 times last year, and now he continues a very impressive battle against Chan-Ho Park.
Well, what happened as the first time up, he swung at the pitches out of the strike zone to strike out. If you throw it in the strike zone, he can handle it. That's a strike. He's only swung at strikes in this at bat, but he does have a habit of chasing pitches out of the strike zone.
And this is the 10th pitch of this showdown. Here's a 3-2, runner not going. It will be the 11th pitch. I think Eric Owens is just huffing and puffing. He just stayed put that time.
Well, I think that's smart sometimes of say a manager. You got a hit and run on, you got a guy running. He runs about 6 or 7 times. He's not going to have the same enthusiasm the 10th time that he had on the first time.
Or oxygen.
Yeah, and if Preston strikes out, he's going to be out easily. Now, if you rested one, you may want to send him again, but I think it's a good idea after about 4 or 5 times to just hold him for a second.
The 11th pitch of this battle. Owens not going.
Well, this
Wilson
time,
called time.
Well, this time they gave him timeout. Last time we saw him trying to call timeout when Chan-Ho Park held the ball so long, and the umpire wouldn't give him the timeout. But I mean, Chan-Ho holds the ball a long time, and that's a good job there, to be honest with you, by Larry Young, because Chan-Ho held the ball a long time. If you're a hitter and you stand in that position a long time, you start to tighten up.
And now the 12th pitch of this at-bat for Preston Wilson. There goes the runner, and it's skied into short right field. Owens retreats to first as Green makes the catch, and there's 2 gone. You know, in the first inning, Chan-Ho Park retired
number 19.
the Marlins using just 12 pitches. In the second inning, only 6 pitches to retire the side. It took 12 pitches just to retire Preston Wilson. So Wilson may have lost the battle, but the Marlins may have won the war. We'll see. Mike Lowell popped to first base in his first at-bat. And Lowell is hit by a pitch. Mike Lowell, who was hit on his left elbow on Saturday and missed 2 games, Mark Leiter of the Brewers hit him. And now Lowell has been hit by a pitch again.
There's Larry Starr, the trainer. He was a trainer with the Reds when I played there. He's retiring this year, actually.
Number 23, Charles.
That ball is way off the plate inside. And watch, Lowell kind of freezes right there. When I say freezes, he doesn't go backwards to try to get out of the way. He just kind of stuck there. See, he doesn't go backwards. It looked like that hit him in a real bad spot. It looked like it got him on the left hip.
You know, Chan-Ho Park, over the last 3 years, has hit 37 batters. The last Dodger to hit that many in a 3-year period, it's easy enough,
Don Drysdale. And Don was actually trying to sometimes. At least that's what a lot of hitters thought.
And rightfully so. Now Charles Johnson with 2 on and 2 out. Skied to right in foul territory. Green runs out of room. Johnson flied to right field in his first at bat.
There's Don Drysdale, Hall of Famer, who was a Dodger broadcaster here for a number of years.
Boy, with Sandy and Drysdale, the Dodgers, it was impossible for them to go into a slump.
Yes, they would never lose 2 in a row. That's also why I think Maury Will should be in the Hall of Fame too, because he was the engine behind that starting staff. I mean, they very rarely got more than 1 or 2 runs, and he usually scored them. Those guys pitched a shutout, and he would score the run.
Kevin Brown, the latter-day Don Drysdale.
Well, he's very intense. I mean, I'm a big fan of Kevin Brown.
Here comes the 1-1. And Johnson checks his swing, bobbled by Chan-Ho, has plenty of time, and the inning is over. No runs, a walk, a hit, batter. 3.5 in the books, and the Dodgers lead 1-0. The bottom third of the Dodger lineup hitting in the bottom half of the 4th inning. And a reminder, this Friday night at 8 o'clock Eastern time on ESPN Classic, a look at the great Tiger Hank Greenberg. 58 home runs in 1938, the American League MVP in 1935 and 1940. Hank Greenberg on the top 50 and beyond on ESPN Classic this Friday night. Jeff Rebelay to lead it off for the Dodgers in the bottom half of the 4th inning, to be followed by Chad Kruder and Chan-Ho Park. Rebelay getting the start at shortstop tonight. Alex Cora, who has been slumping of late, is getting the night off. Tim Bogart, who has been a fine utility man throughout his career, now with the Dodgers, he's about ready to come off the disabled list. He had a pulled hamstring muscle. They expect him back in the next week or 10 days. So there's some roster moves ahead for the Dodgers. 2 balls and no strikes. And when you consider, Joe, that they have an interim general manager in Dave Wallace, who is kind of what Dick Cheney was to George Bush during the campaign. He's looking for the GM, and I think it's fair to say that Dave is not going to appoint himself.
Well, my understanding is that, you know, he enjoys his job in the minor league.
Yeah, I saw Dave yesterday. There's Jim Tracy. And he liked being a roving pitching instructor for the young guys. Here's the 2-1. 3 balls and a strike to Jeff Rebelay.
Well, they've got a lot of decisions to make, so I think they're going to have to get someone pretty soon. You know, you got Chan-Ho Park, who could be a free agent. And what are you going to, I mean, what are you going to do with Gary Sheffield? I mean, you've got some decisions to make.
3-2 now to Rebelay. And you've got the draft coming up in June.
Yeah. Well, being honest with you, I think the draft is something that can take care of itself, because everyone uses the same scouting reports almost anyway, and it's just a matter of where you're going to choose. You know which players are available and which ones are the best players. They're already ranked for you.
And now the 3-2 to Rebelay. Line drive. Oh, what a play by Castillo! Wow! that one, Bill.
You know, Charlie, we might be able to watch this. Phillies and the Astros. The Phillies are down 1, 2 out in the ninth. Pat Burrell, Moises Alou. If he makes a catch, the game is over. Can't do it. Mike Lieberthal, he's coming around all the way from first to tie the game up. But in the bottom of the ninth, Houston, Chris Truby bunting. Ricky Vitalico throws it away. Glenn Barker comes in. Ball game. What a ball game. First place Philly going down.
From a wet gem to a wet blunder. Now here's Chad Kruder. Boy, we have seen just some spectacular defensive plays tonight from Luis Castillo, the Marlins second baseman. And it was Kruder who was victimized by Castillo in his first at-bat.
Well, Reveille hits this ball and is slicing away from Castillo. Plus, it's a tough hop. Stays right with it and makes a fine play.
And he knew there was no hurry once he had fielded the ball. It was a nice, easy throw. 1-2 now to Kruger.
Well, one of my thoughts is that defense is far more important today than it ever was. Maybe not so much this year, but in the last few years, because of all the home runs and all the runs being scored, you make one mistake and it could cost you 6 runs. Or if you make a great play, you could be saving 6 runs because the teams were scoring so many runs. But I think this year is still important, of course, but they're not hitting as many home runs. They're not scoring as many runs. So one blunder doesn't cost you 6 runs. It may only cost you 4 now.
But the other thing is almost everybody can hit now.
Yeah.
And so the difference is the ability to catch and throw.
Yeah. But I think, again, defense has always been important. It's just that sometimes it's more important than other times. And again, it depends on your pitchers. If you have a lot of ground ball pitchers, well, then your infield becomes the most important part of your defense.
The 2-2 to Kruger is now 3-2.
And if you have a lot of fly ball pitchers or you're in Colorado, your outfield defense becomes the most important part.
Or the guy who brings the fishing net out there. So Ryan Dempster has been struggling, but it's still only 1-0. Kruger lays off his ball 4. Dempster, who walked the bases loaded in the first inning,
Number 61.
with his 4th walk of the night.
He has not been able to get on top of his fastball. His fastball, you never see him bounce it. Every fastball he has thrown this side of the strike zone is up and out of the strike zone, which means he's not getting on top of the ball. You know, a lot of times you see pitchers bounce their fastball. They're erratic with their fastball. It means that, you know, they just can't get their rhythm that night. But basically, he has been high with every fastball.
Chan-Ho Park struck out in his first at-bat.
This is one of those times when the high fastball will help you. Anytime a hitter is bunting, you try to throw it up in the strike zone because that's the toughest one to bunt because you get a lot of pop-ups from up there. It's tough to get the barrel up above the ball.
No balls and 2 strikes. Chan-Ho Park, a career 181 hitter with 2 home runs. So he's a very good hitting pitcher.
I think you're in a situation here you have to go ahead and bunt him again because 1-0 is a very tough lead to hold.
He's bunted, and what a bunt. Castillo won't even get the throw. Dempster cuts off Park at the pass, and Kruger is at second base with 2 out now.
Good job there by Park. He didn't try to do too much with it. All he did was just try to make sure that he, you know, got the barrel of the bat on the ball. But again, it's a low pitch. See how he can get the barrel. See, you can get the barrel above the ball on a low pitch, but if it's high, it's very difficult to get the barrel above it.
That was really textbook stuff.
Right. He had a perfect pitch to bunt, and he bunted it perfectly.
And they always talk about how you have to catch the ball with the bat.
Yeah, you just play catch, and that's basically what you're supposed to do. You're not supposed to push at it or whatever. You just stick the barrel out there and catch it, as if you had a glove on that hand.
So Park helps himself. Let's see how much with 2 out, and Tom Goodwin the hitter. Goodwin 1 for 2. Goodwin has been dividing duties at center field with Marquise Grissom. Tom continues to struggle at the plate. He's a veteran, the former Montreal Expo. He and Jim Tracy also have a history together.
Watching Dempster, you know, he has a good fastball. He has a pretty good slider. I don't think it's a great slider, but it's a good slider. And he has a changeup. He doesn't throw his changeup very often. Whenever he does, it's been very effective.
Here's the 1-1.
There's the slider. So, I mean, every once in a while they'll chase it, but it's not what you call a great slider that you can throw it and get away with it all the time. That's just swinging at a bad pitch there.
And Goodwin, the rap against him, despite all of his speed, is the fact that he strikes out much too much. He's already struck out 18 times already this season. What Gordon would like to see out of a leadoff. Now the 1-2. Instead, Dempster steps up.
In theory, this should be another slider down in the, low out of the strike zone. See if he'll go after it again. The old saying goes, you throw it until he proves that he'll lay off of it or he can hit it.
Let's see what he does on the 1-2. And he found a hole in the right field, and they're going to hold Kruder at third. And on the throw, Goodwin goes to second. And so now the runners are at second and third with 2 out.
Well, he hung the slider right in the middle of the plate. He gave him a good pitch to hit. I guess he was trying to bounce it. And watch where this pitch is. It's supposed to be down, but it's right in the middle of the plate and up. And the ball's grounded in the right field. This is bad communication because they should cut this ball right there, and then they have a chance to get Goodwin at second base. Although the throw was down, he may have found it to be tough to handle. Maybe that's what it was. It hit right at his feet. But he had to keep it down. He did a good job of keeping it down. So he did his job. They just didn't cut it off.
And Chad Kruder, the catcher, doesn't run terribly well, was held up by Glenn Hoffman, and it was a good thing because he would have been toast. Gruzelanek with a high fly ball to deep right field. Owens at the wall. Makes the catch. Eric Owens saves 2 runs with a spectacular play.
Well, it was a fine play in right field by Eric Owens to save a couple of runs in the bottom half of the 4th inning. Grzelcyk drills, and look how far he has to go. They were playing him shallow, and watch, as soon as he makes the catch, his right shoulder runs into the wall. Thank goodness they have padding out there, else he could have seriously injured himself. Watch his right shoulder right into the wall. They didn't have padded walls there for a long period of time, and a lot of outfielders were injured. But this has saved a lot of injuries, although you can see still holding his right shoulder there as he comes into the dugout.
Last few years is crazy. It's been around the Dodger clubhouse. They have the padded walls in there, too.
You said that, I didn't.
Kevin Millar to lead it off for the Marlins here in the top half of the 5th inning on just a spectacular catch by Eric Owens. Millar lined to shortstop in his first at-bat, getting the start tonight. The slumping Derek Lee gets the night off at first base. And there's Derek Lee. Leon and Laron Lee. Father and uncle, both of whom spent an awful lot of time playing ball in Japan. So it's a ball and 2 strikes to Kevin Millar in the 5th inning.
Actually, I talked to Laron every once in a while. He still lives in Sacramento. You got me saying Leron, I mean.
There's a fly ball to straightaway center field. Now come in a few steps. Tom Goodwin. Chan-Ho Park continues to cruise along. He's stretching his back a little bit. Opponents' batting averages, only Pedro Martinez and Kevin Brown have been stingier since the beginning of the 2000 season than Chan-Ho Park. Two Dodgers and an ex-Dodger. And now Alex Gonzalez. And the Dodgers have some bookkeeping to attend to at season's end about Chan-Ho Park, who is a free agent. He won an arbitration case this year, making $9.5 million. You know he's going to make a whole lot more than that on the open market. And the Dodgers already are eating $7.5 million of a contract of Carlos Perez, who was released the other day. Still paying Davey Johnson $1.5 million to go fishing in Florida. 2-0. 2 balls and a strike.
I'd say Davey's making a lot of money to go fishing and to work on his golf game.
Eric Owens getting his shoulder looked at after making that spectacular play, robbing Mark Grudzielanek of at least a double and 2 RBIs. And Gonzalez skies it foul behind the plate. Jim Tracy, his rookie year as the manager of the Dodgers. You know, from 1954 through 1996, the Dodgers had 2 managers, Walt Alston and Tommy Lasorda. Since then, Bill Russell, Glenn Hoffman, Davey Johnson, and now Jim Tracy. And the hope is that the quiet Ohioan, much like Walt Alston, will be around for a while. Very popular in the Dodger clubhouse. Gonzalez walks, and now the Mets and Rockies. We have an update from them, and here's Bill Pito.
Charlie, who says it's tough to pitch at Coors Field? Mike Camp is making it look awfully easy. Another jam at home against his former team, the New York Mets. Shinjo into the game-ending double play. 7-hitter for Hampton. He's now 5-0. Rockies win at 6-zip.
He's keeping the ball down, isn't he?
Yes, he is. I mean, he was a good pitcher, and if he can keep the ball down, obviously you can be successful in any ballpark.
Now Ryan Dempster. 1 out, 1 on. He struck out in his first at-bat. He's 1 for 15. And he foul tips it. It's 0-1. That's an impossible pitch to bunt.
Yeah, well, a high fastball, again, is very difficult to bunt anyway, but that one was real high. Now watch, the problem is you can't get your barrel of the bat up there high enough to get on top of it.
And it's imperative you get your coconut out of the way. Here's the 0-1. That's a good-looking bunt. Chan-Ho's got 1 play, and that's to Grudzielanek at first. Gonzalez goes to second, and there's 2 out.
Can't believe he threw him a slider. He throws him a breaking ball, which is the easiest pitch to bunt because of the speed. Now watch, this is a breaking ball. And again, he just says, I'm going to reach out there and get that one. A good job there by Dempster. It's just a slider away, and he just reaches out and pokes at it, and he drops it down in front of the plate. Good job there by Dempster.
So Gonzalez is at second base with 2 out. He's the tying run, and Luis Castillo, who's 1 for 2. Gonzalez with decent speed. And they play Castillo in the outfield. Very shallow, and to hit the other way. Tom Goodwin could be a short fielder in softball. Here's the 1-0. 2 balls and no strikes. Well, Luis Castillo has been unable to produce. He has 6 RBIs on the year. Last year, he had only 17 runs batted in all season. Two and 0. Last year, Castillo hit .334. This year, Castillo is flirting with 200.
Pretty big drop off.
John Bowles is saying he simply lost his confidence.
Well, you know, it's funny about baseball. You can hit 400 one year. If the next year you get off to a slow start, your confidence is shattered. I mean, it's
up the first baseline foul.
The one thing to remember about baseball is that even if you're successful, you're making an out 7 out of 10 times. So you're 7 out of 10 times you're unsuccessful. Let's watch his hands. That's not bad right there, but that pitch was in. I was watching earlier, and it seemed like he was taking his hands with him. I mean, when his body was going forward, his arms were going with it. His hands were going forward, which means you don't have much left to swing with. But that wasn't bad on that particular pitch, but that was an inside and low pitch. Most left-handed hitters can handle that pitch.
Castillo saw more pitches last year than anybody in the National League. Averaged 4.5 pitches per at-bat. Well, he's right on schedule here. Here's a 2-2. Count goes full with Eric Owens on deck. Owens, who made the spectacular play to end the 4th inning, robbing Mark Grizzolonic. Had his right shoulder looked at in the dugout. It's okay. Here's a 3-2 to Castillo. And Chan Ho takes too much time. Chan Ho takes an awful lot of time.
He does that a lot. And, you know, and again, if the hitter just stands there in one position, you know, your hands, everything start to tighten up on the bat. So you should back out.
Now the 3-2. Lined into center field. Tom Goodwin is there to make the catch. Perfectly positioned, and the inning is over. Gary Sheffield will lead off for the Dodgers in the home half of the 5th.
Catfish. What a great arm. Who is that kid anyway?
Of course he's got a great arm, Buttermaker. He's the best athlete in the area. But you don't understand. That's Kelly Leak.
You guys talking about Kelly Leak?
Yeah.
That dude is a bad mother. Talking about a loan shark. I borrowed a nickel from him last week. He said if I can give him a dime by Friday, he'd break my arm.
That's so bandido.
Baseball Tonight, every night at 10 and midnight on ESPN.
Well, we thought we might have a pitcher's duel on hand tonight, Joe, and so far it's lived up to advanced billing. Chan Ho Park and Ryan Dempster. Dempster to face Gary Sheffield, Sean Green, and Eric Karros here in the bottom half of the 5th inning. Sheffield has struck out and walked tonight.
When Sheffield is swinging a bat well as he is now, he just kind of stays back and attacks the ball.
Here's the 1-0.
So even when he swings and misses, he's right there where the ball is. He's not getting out over his front foot, not leaping out. Watch how he stays back. He's back. And that's a pretty good pitch away from him. Moved away.
And a ground ball to short. Easy play for Gonzalez. Bill Pito now has an update. What you got, Bill?
All right, Charlie, thank you very much. As we take a look at Game 7, the Kings and the Avalanche were in the 2nd period. Nelson Emerson's 2nd goal of the playoffs, and it ties it at 1. That's where we are after 2 periods now. The Braves and the Padres, base hit up the middle. As Atlanta extends its lead, Brian Jordan scoring on a base hit. Lopez, the RBI, 3-0 Atlanta.
And here it's 1-0 with 1 out in the bottom half of the 5th. And Sean Green laces one into left field and is going to get by Floyd and go all the way to the wall. Green on his way to 3rd. Green is going to be sent home. Here comes Green. Throw to the plate. Out at the plate.
Well, I guess Hoffman wasn't going to make the mistake of not sending, and the fans get a thrill out of it, but that wasn't a real good attempt, for the home run, because Floyd. Now watch Floyd. The one thing he does great here. Now watch him get up. I mean, he gets up and he chases it. He doesn't trot after it. He goes after it, and that's what makes the play. Green is hustling all the way. He never slowed up. You have to give him credit. He doesn't slow up right here. See, he's going full speed. With 2 outs, I think it's a good play, but with 1 out, it's not such a good play. You see, Floyd, he really hustled back to get the ball. And a great relay there by Gonzalez. Look at that. That's perfect.
Alex Gonzalez with a spectacular throw.
But you have to give Floyd credit because he ran after the ball. He didn't trot after it.
In foul territory, Kevin Millar makes the over-the-shoulder catch. We have seen some spectacular defense tonight, and the Dodgers continue to cling to a 1-0 lead. What do they say? The most exciting play in baseball is the attempt for the inside the park home run.
Well, watch. I mean, the ball is hit on a line. Floyd couldn't decide whether to come get any fouls. And now look at him. He really gets back there to get the ball. Actually, he's trotting. I thought he got back there a lot quicker than he did. And then Gonzalez makes a perfect throw. And Charles Johnson gave him a good target because he was inside the line, giving him the target, and then he caught the ball and went to get Green very easily.
And curious that Glenn Hoffman, the third base coach, would send Green with just 1 out.
Yeah, but I think because he didn't send Grzelcyk on that ball in the short left center field a while ago, he decided he was going to be a little more aggressive this time. But with 1 out, I think he probably should have stayed there. It's a 1-0 ball game. You got to try to score 1 more run and give your pitcher something to work with.
Eric Owens leading off for the Marlins in the top half of the 6th inning. He's walked and bounced out tonight and made a spectacular defensive play back in the 4th inning, robbing Grzelcyk of a 2-run extra base hit. And here is Owens leading off, and he's on his way to second. Here's a throw from Green, and he is safe at second base.
And he was safe. That was a good call there at second base by second base umpire Jim Wolf. Out comes Jim Tracy, but the guy was safe.
Left fielder.
He gets his hand in, and then he gets tagged.
Left Floyd.
And a good hustle play there by Owens. He kind of surprised Green. See, Green didn't know he was going. Now he throws a strike, but watch his hand. See, his hand is already in there when Grzelcyk tags him. And that's a good call. He doesn't slow up, but he caught Green off balance. And watch his right hand. See, it's in there before he tags him. He tags him on the elbow.
Second base umpire Jim Wolf on top of the play. And so now the Marlins with the tying run. And second base. And Floyd is hit by a pitch. And he doesn't like it. That's the second time that Park has hit a Marlins batter tonight.
Well, I think the reason Floyd doesn't like it because, as you mentioned earlier, he has hit Park pretty well over his career. And he sees the ball well off of Clark, off of Chan-Ho Park. I'm sure he's not throwing at him. This one gets away and gets him on the right hip. But like I said, I think Floyd thinks that he might have done it intentionally. But you could see there, again, what we were talking about, the guy stepping in, and he didn't have a chance to move back out. That ball wasn't that far off the plate inside.
Cliff Floyd has 4 career home runs against Chan-Ho Park. And by the way, the inside the park home run attempt by Sean Green. Last time the Dodgers had an inside the park home run, you have to go back 7 years. Mitch Webster did it against the Padres. So now, first and second, nobody out. Preston Wilson. 0-for-2, and a nice play by Chad Kruger.
And this is the kind of situation where if you're Preston Wilson, just be a little more patient than you were before, and you will definitely get a good pitch to hit.
Preston has struck out and flied to right. Eric Owens, the runner at second base, and Cliff Floyd, the runner at first base. With nobody out in the 6th inning. This is the Marlins' first threat of the night. They have only 2 base hits.
That wasn't being patient.
There's Chan-Ho. He gave up a leadoff single to Luis Castillo. And the leadoff hit by Eric Owens here in the 6th. That's been it. But he has hit 2 batters and walked 2. And Chan-Ho is ahead 1-2. Nothing doing in the Dodger bullpen. Mike Lowell is on deck. He's the Marlins' leading RBI producer this year. The leadoff double by Owens. Floyd hit by a pitch. And Wilson is struck out for the second time tonight and the 32nd time this season. That is the 4th strikeout for Chan-Ho Park. There's 1 out in the 6th.
Well, he only had 1 good pitch to hit. The first pitch was a curveball out of the strike zone. He chased the first strike. The second was a good fastball up, but that was a pitch that he could have handled. And then this is a good breaking ball down and away again.
And now Mike Lowell, who, like Cliff Floyd, was hit by a pitch in his last at-bat. He popped to first in his first at-bat. 28 runs batted in on the season. 10th in the National League in that category. 1 ball and no strikes. He has 13 doubles, Mike Lowell, who came up in the Yankee organization. Owens at second base. Floyd the runner at first. 1 out in the 6th. Critter digs it out.
Well, see, you have to be patient. A lot of times hitters go up in that situation. They say, well, I've got to get a hit. I've got to do this. No, the pitcher has to get you out. Make him come to you, and then you get a good pitch to hit. And Lowell so far in this at bat has been more patient than Wilson was.
2-0.
See, that's patience right there. You don't swing at that pitch just out of the strike zone.
And Charles Johnson is on deck. Johnson is 1 for 7 lifetime against Park. Got the green light, fouled it away.
I actually like that. I mean, a lot of people say, well, you don't let certain hitters hit 3-0. I like that because he's been swinging the bat well, and you know Park is going to try to throw a strike. And that was a good pitch to hit, although it looked like he hurt himself a little bit there. He's stretching. But that was a fastball in the middle of the plate, and he tried to drive it.
Well, remember, he was hitting the ribs the last time up. And now here comes the 3-1.
Well, that's to check and see if they're going to be running 3-1 on a hit-and-run situation.
Trailing by a run, do you do that now?
No, I wouldn't, but I'm not the manager.
They're not either. 3-2.
And see, that's
a good thing.
As patient as he was to get to 3-0, you can't give up on 3-1. I mean, again, if he takes this pitch now, the bases are loaded. You have to make the guy give you a pitch to hit. And he did so until he got 3-0. He got a pitch to hit, and he fouled it back. But you can't swing at a pitch like that, 3-1, with runners in scoring position. But
well, this is a huge pitch coming up. 3-2 with 1 out, 2 on, 6th inning, and the Dodgers nursing a 1-0 lead. All Jim Tracy could do is watch. Runners stay put. Call strike 3. Strikeout number 5.
Well, every pitch was away. He starts this slider on the inside, and it freezes Lowell. Let's watch. It freezes Lowell. Starts inside, so it freezes him. And you see it. He's all upset, but I'm not sure where the ball came across the plate, because it looked like it came around the plate maybe, but it could have caught the inside corner when it crossed the plate.
Well, it came in through the back door, and
in any case, with 2 strikes, runners at first and second, you've got to be able to hit that pitch or swing at it. Not necessarily hit it, but swing at it.
So meanwhile, Eric Owens, who led off with the double, and Floyd, who was hit by a pitch, sit and wait, and now there are 2 out.
You have to give Chan-Ho Park a lot of credit here, Charlie, because he got in trouble and he still didn't give in. I mean, he was trying to come off the plate inside the Floyd. He hit him, but he never gave in to Preston Wilson, and he really didn't give in to to Mike Lowell. He threw him a 3-2 breaking ball, and he threw him a 3-1 breaking ball. And a lot of young hitters will chase pitches out of the strike zone in clutch situations.
2 out and 2 on, and Charles Johnson rips it down to the left field line and foul by a foot. And a nice play by a fan.
Well, he hung a breaking ball to Charles Johnson, and Charles knew what to do with it. Just a little too quick. This is a hanging breaking ball. It's supposed to be down and away, and you see where it is right there. And Charles was just a little bit too quick.
Charles Johnson, a career .249 hitter. Enjoying the best start of his career. Hitting .316, 9 home runs, 24 RBIs. 1-1. Spent half the season in Baltimore last year, in the latter half with the White Sox. And between the two teams, he had 31 home runs and 91 runs batted in. So beginning to turn his offensive game around in the past year and a half. 1-1. The rap against him was his. They got to throw down to second base, and for just a moment, it looked like Eric Owens might be caught.
Well, he was caught in the middle, but Kruder couldn't just come up and throw it. And watch, he's going to be way out here, but Kruder can't just throw to second, because if he does, he'll go to third base. So he had to step out in front, and by that time he was able to get back.
So meanwhile, Chan-Ho Park is a strike away from getting out of a 2-on and nobody out predicament.
That was a great pitch he just made to Charles Johnson. Slider down and away.
Let's see what he does again. Fastball ripped past a diving Hansen. On his way home is Owens. Here's a throw to the plate. What a collision out at the plate. Great throw from Sheffield. Great play by Kruder. Owens out at the plate. The score maintains at 1-0.
ESPN's Wednesday Night Baseball is brought to you by Lotrimin AF, the #1 recommendation of doctors.
We have had some spectacular plays tonight. The most recent causing the Marlins to make a defensive change here in the bottom half of the 6th inning. Dave Hansen leading off. Lyle Mouton is now in right field, replacing Eric Owens. Fly ball into short left field. An easy play for Cliff Floyd. The Reds and Diamondbacks are playing ball tonight, and Bill Peto's got an update.
All right, Charlie, Dave DeLucci's pitch hitting for the D-backs. Game's all tied up at 2 in the 8th, and look at that one. If you're in the pool, look out! 3-run pinch home run for DeLucci. It's 4th of the year. It's 5-2 D-backs.
They have always loved David DeLucci out there, and he comes up big. Now here's Jeff Rebele, who's 1 for 2. So Eric Owens has 2 collisions tonight, one with the wall and one with Chad Kruder, and after that, no Moss. And so Lyle Mouton is now in right field, replacing Eric Owens. Lowell with the easy play. Rebele is gone, or Rebele. Now there's 2 out.
Well, truthfully, he should not have had a collision at home plate.
Catcher.
It's a great throw by Gary Sheffield. He comes up, gets rid of it quickly, and it's right on the money. And you'll see that Kruder is blocking the plate. But if Owens slides, he is safe instead of running over him. When the catcher is standing straight up, you should slide and not try to run over him.
A little too macho for his own good.
The plate was actually open. If he would have slid and stayed down low, by the time he caught it and got down to him, he probably would have been safe. But fine play by both Kruder and Gary Sheffield.
Sheffield with a great throw, and now here's Chad Kruder, who is the recipient of that collision. He has walked and bounced into a double play tonight. Of course, the Dodgers are awaiting the return of Paul LaDuca. He's been their everyday catcher this season, and he's on the disabled list. Kruger flashes it foul the other way. That is the second time tonight that Eric Owens has hurt his right shoulder. Back in the fourth inning, made a spectacular play against the right field wall and jammed his shoulder then, and then he did it a second time in the collision with Kruder. So it's 2 balls and a strike with 2 out. Ryan Dempster. It's been an uphill struggle for him tonight. He has yet to retire the side in order. Well, 3 balls and a strike.
He got the first 2 hitters out easily, and now he's having trouble finishing off the inning.
That's what happened back in the first inning, Joe. He retired the first 2 hitters, and then he walked 3. And he lines it right into the glove of first baseman Kevin Millar. And that's the first 1, 2, 3 inning of the night for Ryan Dempster as we head to the 7th. On April 18th, as you see Ryan Dempster head into the Marlins clubhouse, he lost a 1-0 heartbreaker in Atlanta to Tom Glavine. Now he's on the short end. This copyrighted telecast, presented by authority of the Office of the Commissioner of Baseball, may not be reproduced or retransmitted in any form, and the accounts and descriptions of this game may not be disseminated without express written consent. And to get the most complete coverage of Major League Baseball on the internet, log on to MLB.com. We head to the top half of the 7th inning. Charlie Steiner, Joe Morgan, our Wednesday night late night game from Dodger Stadium. Kevin Millar, who's 0 for 2, is ahead 1 ball and no strikes. Kevin Millar's got one of those Craig Biggio helmets working. Man, that is nasty. Here's the 1-0. Biggio was all upset when they changed the logo. He had to get a new helmet last year. And now Millar's, you can't even see the logo on that thing. Here's the 1-1. Ball foul. It's 2. So I saw Tommy Lasorda yesterday. He was back from a trip over to Japan, and he was telling me how much he hated the Cincinnati Reds.
I've heard those stories before myself.
And he said that he would not allow any of his players to wear anything red to the ballpark. Millar is beaten, and we've got an update now. Hockey now. And here's Bill Pito.
All right, Charlie, it's game 7. The Kings and the Avalanche all tied up at 1. Third period, Chris Drury, 7th goal of this postseason. 2-1 Avalanche.
Well, they're talking hockey in L.A. for the first time in a long time. That's a 6th strikeout for Chan-Ho Park. 1 out here in the 7th inning. And impossible for me to believe that Tommy Lasorda would say unkind things and in foul language about the Cincinnati Reds.
We've had those conversations because he told me that he wouldn't even let the wives wear anything red on the plane. So he said that when he came and took over the Dodgers, that he felt they were intimidated by the Big Red Machine. So he wanted to change a lot of things. And he did do that.
Here's the 0-1. You didn't hear him scream those things across the dugout? Of course not.
No.
He was saying that one day his wife just come back from the hardware store and bought a new rake, and the metal stuff was painted red, and she made her take it back. Alex Gonzalez, 1 ball, 2 strikes. Chan-Ho Park has struck out 6, and he has walked 2 and hit 2 batters.
This has not been a gem by Chan-Ho Park, but he has done the job, and he's kept the Marlins from scoring along with the help of his defense.
I mean, it's a 1-0 game. The Dodgers with 6 hits, the Marlins with 3. And both pitchers have really had to gut it up tonight.
No, you're right. I mean, normally a 1-0 ball game with only 9 base hits in it, you would figure we'd be farther along than the top of the 7th inning. But you also remember there's a couple of walks and a couple of hit batsmen. So it hasn't been a gem, but he's done the job. The objective is to keep the other team from scoring.
Now we've had 2 exciting plays at the plate. A couple of absolutely spectacular catches, infield and outfield. Gary Sheffield with the great throw. Sean Green with the bid for the inside the park home run. And Chad Kruder, who was the recipient of a collision with Eric Owens, although Owens came out of the game. Swung on and missed, strike 3. Millar is retired. Correction, Gonzalez is retired. There's 2 out. That's the 7th strikeout for Chan-Ho Park.
And he struck out 4 out of the last 5 hitters that he has faced. He's getting this little slide piece down and away. Look at that slide. That's a pretty good one right there because it broke really late. And there goes the bat flying down toward the empty third base coaching box.
Like a hammer throw in the Olympics. Third base coach Freddie Gonzalez.
When he gets that slider breaking down and away like that and it breaks late, it's very difficult to lay off of. Now that was a good pitch to hit, but when he gets it down and away, you can't lay off of it.
Ryan Dempster, who can't hit a lick, and his team is down a run. 2 out in the 7th inning. Why not pinch hit here?
Because just what you said, there are 2 outs in the 7th inning. And not only that, it's only a 1-0 ball game.
There's still time. Here's the 1-1.
If this was the 8th inning, I'm sure that they would pinch hit, but you're in the 7th inning. I happen to agree with this because there are a lot of things going on in the mind of Voles. I mean, this guy's pitched a good ball game. He lost 1-0 to Tom Glavine, and he's losing 1-0 here. You're going to let him see it out. You're not going to pinch hit for him right here. If there was some runners on base, I'm sure he would have pinch hit.
Here's the 1-2. And Chan-Ho Park retires a side, strikes him out. He's got 8 on the night, and the Dodgers lead 1-0. Jim Tracy congratulating his starting pitcher Chan-Ho Park, whose night is done. And Hiram Boca Chica will pinch hit for him in the bottom half of the 7th inning. Interesting, Joe, that John Bowles elects not to pinch hit with 2 out for Ryan Dempster, but Jim Tracy is pinch hitting for Chan-Ho Park to begin the bottom of the 7th with Boca Chica.
Well, I guess Park got tired. He only struck out 5 of the last 6 hitters he faced, and he only had thrown 101 pitches. So I don't know exactly why he's doing it, but you know, that's Jim Tracy's decision.
And Mike Fetters will come on in the 8th inning. Boca Chica is 10 for 39 this year. No home runs, 4 RBIs. And at first base, the Marlins make a defensive change. Derek Lee replacing Kevin Millar. So we're heading toward the home stretch. The Dodgers with a 1-0 lead. Boca Chica leading off in the bottom half of the 7th. And then it's the top of the order, Tom Goodwin and Mark Grudzielanek. First pitch, second pitch from Ryan Dempster. It's 1-1. Boca Chica has never faced Ryan Dempster. The Dodgers are running 6 hits. The Marlins no runs, 3 hits and 1 error. And the 1-1 to Boca Chica. Breaking ball, 1-2. And in the bullpen, Vic Darrensburg, who grew up in Los Angeles. So it's a homecoming for him, and it looks like he'll be getting some work. Here comes the 1-2. Boca Chica is struck out, and there is 1 out here in the 7th. Now a look at the local and key plays of the night. Eric Owens with a spectacular catch, robbing Mark Grudzielanek. And then Sean Green, as Cliff Floyd couldn't get the liner going away from him. Green was sent home And on a spectacular throw by Alex Gonzalez, Green is cut down at the plate in his bid for an inside-the-park home run. And Gary Sheffield with a great throw, getting Eric Owens at the plate. We have had some great theater tonight, and a lot more fireworks than a 1-0 game might lead you to believe. That was the Loterman key plays of the game you just saw. They've been some good ones. So 1 out, nobody on in the 7th inning, and Tom Goodwin takes a strike. It's 1-1. Dempster has now struck out 4. Correction, he has now struck out 5. Two balls and a strike, 1 out. And it finds a hole, a 1-out single for Tom Goodwin. Bill Pito with an update now. What you got, Bill?
Talking about LA's hockey team. They gave up a goal to Chris Drury, and then just 3:19 after that. It is Billy Niemanen. Power play goal, 3-1 Colorado.
Well, here in Los Angeles, home of the Kings and the Dodgers.
And the Lakers.
Mark Grudzielanek is the hitter, and meanwhile Tom Goodwin tonight is 3 out of 4. One of the fastest men in baseball. Attempted a steal back in the 3rd inning, and he was gunned down by Charles Johnson.
Well, he ran on an 0-2 pitch that was up and away, and it gave Johnson a perfect pitch to throw on.
And Goodwin with a good-sized lead.
Well, he's going to do 2 things there. If he gets a big lead like that, he's going to force Dempster and Johnson to call something hard, meaning a fastball, and it's going to help his hitter. Grudzielanek should be looking just for a fastball. And he throws him a breaking ball. I guess that tells you that he's not afraid of Goodwin running. At least Charles Johnson's not.
Johnson has thrown out 10 of 18 would-be base stealers this year. That's the highest percentage of any catcher in Major League Baseball. Here's the 1-0. Goodwin not going. There's a high fly ball to deep center field. Back at the wall, and it is gone. A home run from Mark Grudzielanek, his 7th of the season, his 16th RBI, and it is now 3-0 Dodgers. Grudzielanek hit the home run with a torn ligament in his right thumb.
That's how the threat of a stolen base can help the hitter behind you. If you're a base stealer and you saw Goodwin bluff, you know that you're going to get a fastball. So you sit on something hard and you wait. And Grudzielanek hits it really well to left center field. I guess he knew he got enough of it, because he kind of drops his head and starts trotting.
Now here's Gary Sheffield, who skies it to short left field. The Floyd ambling on in.
I've always said, Charlie, that I wish I could hit behind the base stealer, because you know what's coming 3 out of every 4 pitches. It's got to be something hard, a fastball or really a hard slider. And it helps the hitters behind you. So base stealers help guys behind them as much as they do even if they don't steal the base. Just the threat of a stolen base forces the pitcher and the catcher to go away from their game plan and have to come with something hard. Something like a fastball.
So Tom Goodwin, who was hitting just 200 coming into the game, 3 out of 4 tonight. And Grudzielanek with 7 home runs already this season, matching last year's season total. So he's playing with house money for the next 100 and some odd games. The 0-1 to Sean Green. Green tagged out at the plate on his bid for an inside-the-park home run back in the 5th inning. The 1-1. Green fouls it off. It's 1-2.
But Dempster's still throwing the ball well. He just got himself in a position where the hitter knew exactly what was coming, and he was able to hit. I mean, I didn't think he hit that ball all that well. It looked like more of a fly ball, but it just kept going. And the one thing I've noticed about Dodger Stadium this year is that the ball really flies out of here. This used to be a great pitcher's ballpark. in that the ball didn't carry well here. But I've done 3 games here this year, and the ball is really carrying well at night.
Hard-throwing Braden Looper joins Darrensburg. Lee underhand toss to Dempster. The inning is over, but on the Grusolonic home run, his 7th of the season, the Dodgers lead it 3-0.
ESPN's Wednesday Night Baseball is brought to you by Lotrimin AF, the #1 recommendation of doctors.
36-year-old Mike Fetters now on in relief for the Dodgers, making his 11th appearance of the season on this beautiful night in L.A. I mean, his numbers this year have been staggering, Joe. The ERA and opposing batters are hitting just .088 against him.
Well, he's quite a show on the mound. I really like him. And the part of it, you see he's taking those deep breaths because a lot of it has to do with the fact he was taught that way because he has asthma, and that's to help him to relax out there. But then he gives you that quick look at the plate. That's what I like.
It's kind of a latter-day Al Roboski.
Yeah, exactly.
Sands the crushing of the ball into the glove. The 1-0 to Luis Castillo, who tonight had a leadoff hit. And outside of that, he's bounced back to the box and lined to center field.
Good.
3 balls and no strikes.
Good job by Castillo anyway, just to try to distract him. And I saw a note that he is one of the better leadoff men at taking pitches. He's not hitting as well this year, but I mean, he swings at the first pitch less than 1 out of every 10 or 11 times at bat.
He swings at the first pitch 11% of the time. And Fetters walks him on 4 pitches.
So those 3 runs, those 2 runs the Dodgers got in the bottom of the 7th were very handy because Castillo would be running, and if he was the tying run, he could try to steal a base.
That's the Dodgers' new pitching coach, Jim Colburn, coming out to talk with Fetters. And this Sunday night, 8 o'clock Eastern time, the Killer Bees swarm into Cincinnati. John and Joe will be on television. Dave Campbell and I will talk to you on the radio. Our Sunday night game of the week. So meanwhile, we've got ourselves a terrific pitchers duel. Chan Ho Park on the verge of winning his 4th if Mike Fetters can keep up his end of the bargain.
Well, this game is far from over simply because you're in the middle of this lineup now. Yet they have some really good heroes, Lyle Mouton, and then you follow Cliff Floyd and Preston Wilson, Mike Law. They're all able to hit the ball out of the ballpark.
Lyle Mouton, who came in to replace Eric Owens, who jammed his shoulder not once but twice. Once making a spectacular catch against the right field wall, and then once running into Chad Kruger at the plate. So Owens' night is done, and Mouton with his 10th at-bat of the season. 1-1.
Fetters finally throws a strike. Had a good job there by Mouton not to be swinging at the first strike he throws this inning.
Look at that face. Here's the 1-1. 2 balls and a strike.
And you see what he does. He throws you a lot of sinkers, and then he'll throw you a splitter. He throws a lot of different pitches if he can get ahead of you.
It's an angry young man.
That's a focused young man.
Yeah, here's the 2-1. Runner goes. Ground ball to third. Fair ball. Go across the diamond by Hansen. Mouton is retired. Castillo goes to second base, and there's 1 out here in the 8th inning.
I like that play. Go ahead and steal second base, even if he was running anyway. He could have probably stolen the base had Mouton not swung at the ball. And the reason for that is because you may not be able to get them all back here in the 8th inning, but if you can get 1 or maybe 2 runs here, then you give yourself a shot in the 9th inning. Nice play there by Hansen.
And now the hitter is Cliff Floyd, who's nothing for 2 and was hit by a pitch. And Floyd in the throes of a mini slump. 1 for his last 13. 0-1.
Well, he goes up there attacking the first pitch. But because they have power, Cliff Floyd, Preston Wilson, and Mike Lowell are all capable of getting the team back in the ball game with one swing here.
Well, the middle of the Marlins lineup, Floyd, Wilson, Lowell, and Johnson, each have driven in 20 runs or more apiece. Only 2 other teams in the National League have 4 batters with at least 20 RBIs. Milwaukee and Arizona. The 0-1. 1 ball, 1 strike, 1 out. Top half of the 8th inning. There's never been any question about Cliff Floyd's abilities. You take a look at Charles Johnson, and he's hoping to get an at-bat here in the 8th inning. Problem with Floyd has been he's been too brittle. He's been on the DL 6 times in 7 years. Only 1 year has he had more than 420 at-bats in a season.
And he had a real bad injury to his wrist years ago. That took him a couple of years just to get over that.
2-1. 3 balls and a strike.
And he's showing good patience here. Those pitches are just going out of the strike zone at the last second. I mean, they're in the strike zone and all of a sudden they're sinking out, but he's been able to take them.
Now the 3-1. Drilled to center field and deep. Back at the wall and gone. A home run. Cliff Floyd, with his 11th home run of the season, now has 29 runs batted in, and the Marlins are back within 1 at 3-2.
And when you have power, you're never out of the ball game, and especially when you get that power up in the 8th inning here, as they had Cliff Floyd. Now they also have Preston Wilson up, and Preston's capable of hitting the ball out of the ballpark. This is actually a low fastball that goes out of the strike zone, but Cliff Floyd is so strong, and he knows right there that he got enough of it. Goodwin goes back to the wall, and no chance.
Jim Tracy knows Cliff Floyd all too well. In 1993 at AA Harrisburg, Cliff Floyd was the minor league player of the year. At 31 stolen bases at .329, a ground ball base hit, and Preston Wilson with a single.
And again, I mean, Preston Wilson stole 30 bases last year, so he's capable of taking off and getting into scoring position if they want to do that. Mike Lowell, of course, also hitting 300 at the beginning of tonight's ball game.
Jeff Shaw quickly goes to work. To finish the story on Cliff Floyd, when he had such a spectacular year at AA Harrisburg. At .329, 26 home runs, 101 runs batted in, stole 31 bases. His manager was Jim Tracy. Now, of course, the manager of the Dodgers. Now Mike Lowell is the hitter, and Preston Wilson back standing up. Wilson can steal a base. He's got 8. He's second in the National League, second only to Luis Castillo. And with 1 out here in the 8th inning, let's see what John Bowles has up his sleeve.
I think you have to allow him to go. He has to pick his pitch, try to get a good jump and take off. I think you have to do that. It doesn't do you any good to have speed if you're not going to use it.
Ryan Dempster. Preston Wilson. 2-step fake toward second.
I think Preston thought that was a pitch out. It looked like Fetters changed his motion on that particular delivery. And if you're a base stealer and you know his motion and he changes it like that, it's usually a pitch out.
Chad Kruger has an outstanding throwing arm. Wilson has stolen 8 bases this year. He's been caught twice. And the leadoff walk comes back to take a bite out of the Dodgers in what had been a 3-run lead. A ball and a strike now to Mike Lowell, who's nothing for 2, and he was hit by a pitch. Checks to Delivers to Lowell. Line drive into the glove of Hansen. There's 2 gone now. Now we'll get a hockey update from Bill Pito. What you got, Bill?
All right, Charlie, looks like it's going to be Colorado and St. Louis in the Western Conference Finals. The Avalanche adding to their advantage here. Sean Podine from Eric Messier making it 4-1 Colorado inside of 7 minutes.
Looks like the Kings have been checkmated by the Avalanche. But what a great ride it was for the LA Kings this year.
And they showed a lot of heart to be able to bounce back and force that Game 7.
And now here's Charles Johnson, who's 1 for 3. Preston Wilson, a short lead at first. The Dodgers in the 8th will have Karros, Hansen, and Reboulet hitting. Well, if the Dodgers are able to get the Marlins out here in the 8th, at least the meat of the order will have come and gone. And they'll be facing the bottom third of the Florida lineup in the bottom half or top half of the 9th inning. So Johnson is a very important player in this drama now. It's Cliff Floyd with his 2-run home run here in the 8th has brought the Marlins to within 1. Runner goes, throw to second, and he is safe at second base. The 9th stolen base of the year for Preston Wilson, and now the tying run is in scoring position.
And a good throw by Kruder, just a good jump by Preston Wilson, a nice slide. I'm impressed with Jim Wolf at second base and how he calls these close plays at second base. But watch his foot. See, his foot is in there and he's safe. And Grzelcyk thinks he gets him every time, but he is clearly in there. Watch his foot. Watch his front foot right there. Now Grzelcyk hits him. And a good job there by Wolf to be in position.
Johnson fouls it. It's 1-1 with 2 out. Jim Wolf, rookie umpire. 1-1, 2 out, 8th inning. 2 runs are in. The Dodgers nursing a 1-run lead. 1 ball, 2 strikes. So a 2-run home run by Grzelcyk in the bottom of the 7th, and a 2-run home run by Cliff Floyd in the top of the 8th. And we are at 3-2 with 2 out. Grzelcyk with 7 home runs this season. That matches his home run total for all of last year. And Cliff Floyd hit his 11th here in the 8th.
Now what he's doing is telling Preston to get a bigger lead at second base.
One and 2. Here's the pitch. Off his foot.
That's a fastball running in, and Johnson gets on top of it. It looks like he hit it off his knee.
Right off his knee. Here's Fetters bearing down. The 1-2.
Good pitch. That pitch was started toward the outside part of the plate and just moved away. And Floyd did, Charles Johnson did all he could do with it. Watch the slider. Right on the outside corner. Now it moves away just a little bit. And all Charles Johnson could do was foul it.
Well, we do the 1-2 again, with Wilson leading off second. Strike 3. Fetters strikes out Johnson, but Cliff Floyd's 2-run homer in the 8th has brought the Marlins to within 1 as we head to the bottom half of the 8th inning. Cliff Floyd with a 2-run home run in the top half of the 8th inning gets the Marlins to within 1, and the Marlins have a new pitcher. But first, Mike Fetters, give you some idea of his response to that 2-run home run hit by Cliff Floyd.
Well, he knew it was a result of his wildness. He fell behind, and Cliff Floyd knew what was coming, and he was able to handle it.
And now the new pitcher, Braden Looper, making his 15th appearance of the season. He came over from the Cardinals in the trade for Renteria. First ball swinging. Eric Karros backhanded by Lowell. Throws across the diamond. One pitch, one out in the 8th inning. And a whole new attitude here in Dodger Town, at least according to Gary Sheffield. There's some fight and feistiness to this team.
And this is the first time I've really seen us fight for something. And I've been here for 4 years, and I really never seen that determination that we had. When something go wrong, we lay down. And, you know, now we're fighting back, and we really want to win. And I think that's the biggest difference.
Well, we saw that feistiness out of Mike Fetters. And now Dave Hansen is the hitter. He's nothing for 3. There is a decidedly new and different atmosphere in the Dodger clubhouse under rookie manager Jim Tracy. Of course, he was thrown into the deep end of the pool in spring training right out of the box when Gary Sheffield uttered his comments about wanting his contract extended or being traded and so on. And Tracy talked to the Dodgers to a man, and they say the way he handled all of that and the way he had a closed-door meeting and addressed the issues and had Gary address the team, he won a lot of respect right out of the chute. A 1-out walk to Dave Hansen in the 8th inning. And Gary Sheffield is on the cover this week of ESPN the magazine. Profile of the Dodger left fielder. Also a closer look at Ichiro Mania that's sweeping the majors from its epicenter in Seattle. Well, there he is. Gary Sheffield on the cover this week of ESPN magazine.
Interesting caption there that said, forget everything you've ever heard about Gary.
Alex Cora is going to pinch run now for Dave Hansen at first base. 1 out, bottom half of the 8th inning, and the Dodgers looking for a little bit of insurance. By the way, in the top half of the 9th, it will be the bottom third of the Marlins lineup. Derek Lee, Alex Gonzalez, and then a pinch hitter for the pitcher. And I suspect that we'll see Jeff Shaw in the 9th inning to go for the save. Rebele tonight is 1 for 3. So we may see Rebele move over to third and Cora play short. Chris Donalds is also on the bench, so he could conceivably play third base for the Dodgers also.
I don't think you, if the score remains 3-2, I don't know if you want to use up another position player. You're using Cora here, and then to use another one in a 1-run ball game that might go extra innings, I don't think is a good idea, but we'll see. If you have a 3-run lead and you want to put in someone for defense, I understand, but a 3-2 ball game is one swing of the bat, you can go extra innings.
Inside low, it's 1-1 to Jeff Rebele. Ryan Dempster, all he can do is sit and watch. At the moment, he's on the losing end of another 1-run game. 3 weeks ago in Atlanta, lost a 1-0 decision to Tom Glavine. Dempster last year, the youngest National League All-Star. John Bowles, his 4th year as the manager of the Marlins. The 1-1 to Rebele. Low and away. It's 2-1. Looper came over from the Cardinals along with Armando Almanza. The 2-1 runner goes foul back and out of play, 2-2.
And they were trying to hit and run there. 2 balls, 1 strike. And they put Cora in motion, and Rebele tried to take a shot toward right field.
That's Chris Donalds with a bat in his hand. Came up in the Met organization. Had a cup of tea in Japan. Cora back. Cora was rested tonight. He's been in the throes of a batting slump. But Jim Tracy told him that he's going to get the night off tonight and be back in the lineup tomorrow. 2-2 with one out in the bottom of the 8th. Looks like a tailor-made double play ball, doesn't it? And it is. Well, the Marlins enter the last chance saloon. They go to the 9th, trailing by 1, and it's the bottom third of the lineup coming up.
ESPN's Wednesday Night Baseball is brought to you by the new generation in digital communications, WorldCom, Generation D, and by Miller High Life.
And we welcome you to Dodger Stadium. Those of you who've just been watching the Braves and Padres. Charlie Steiner, Joe Morgan, top half of the 9th inning. The Dodgers with a 3-2 lead, and the Dodgers have Jeff Shaw on in relief. Shaw making his 17th appearance of the season in search of his 11th save.
And there you see the numbers for Jeff Shaw. He's one of the premier closers in the league. Doesn't overpower you. Has a good fastball and a slide piece.
And Derek Lee in his first at-bat of the night. Takes a strike. It's 0-1. Lee has been struggling, and so he got the night off tonight. Kevin Millar got the start, but Lee came in as a defensive change in the 7th inning. So this is his first at-bat against Jeff Shaw. And he drills it into center field, and there is Tom Goodwin. 1 out in the 9th inning. The Dodgers have made some defensive changes here in the 9th. Marquise Grissom replaces Gary Sheffield in left.
Alex Gonzalez.
And in shortstop, Alex Cora, who came in to pinch run for Dave Henson. And Rebele, who started tonight at short, has moved over to third base here in the 9th inning. So Lee lines to center field, and Alex Gonzalez is the hitter. He has struck out twice and walked once. The Dodgers in search of their 19th win of the season, and Shaw immediately gets ahead of Gonzalez. It's 0-1.
That's basically what Shaw will do. He'll try to get ahead of you, and then he tries to get you to chase that little slider out of the strike zone.
Gonzalez having a comeback year after a dreadful 2000. He skies to short left field. Circling underneath is Grissom, and there's 2 gone.
That's what you call getting away with one. That was a backup slider that just hung on the inside part of the plate.
And now the Marlins are down to their final out. NHL tonight coming up next. Ryan McGuire will pinch hit.
Ryan McGuire.
And Ryan Dempster, who was outstanding tonight, but is now on the short end of a 3-2 score and is about to see his record drop to 3-4 unless the lefty McGuire can come through. Outside corner, call strike to Ryan McGuire. It's 0-1.
Good job by Jeff Shaw. He hits the outside corner with the right-handed hitters. Now he starts off hitting the outside corner with the left-handed hitter, keeping the ball away.
Ryan McGuire 2 for 3 lifetime against Jeff Shaw. He misses outside. It's 1-1. Chan Ho Park, an out away from his 4th win of the season. And he was outstanding tonight. Here's the 1-1. High and away, 2-1. Mark Grudzielanek, whose 2-run home run in the 7th inning, his 7th of the year, gave the Dodgers a 3-run lead, and so they could ward off the 2-run home run in the top of the 8th by Cliff Floyd. McGuire goes around, and now the Marlins are down to their final strike. $28,000 at Dodger Stadium on their feet. The Marlins down to their final strike. Foul back and out of play. So Ryan McGuire and the Marlins stay alive at least for one more pitch.
And you can see Jeff Shaw. He moves the ball in, out, up, and down. So he uses everything that he has. Again, he doesn't have an overpowering fastball. He hits the outside corner. That was a fastball he went up with.
2-2 with 2 out. They do it again. The Marlins go to San Diego tomorrow. So they'll play here one more game tomorrow, then they go to San Diego for the weekend. And now the 2-2. Ground ball off the glove of Shaw. Cora throws. Game time. And so the Dodgers win it 3-2. Joe?
Well, it was a well-pitched ball game. Chan-Ho Park shows that he is capable of putting a small number on the board. He follows Kevin Brown, and maybe the Dodgers do have enough pitching to win it that way. I don't think they have the offense to beat someone 8-7 every night, but they do have a good pitching staff.
So Chan-Ho Park wins it. Ryan Dempster loses it, and the Dodgers win by a score of 3-2. Coming up next, NHL Tonight. For Joe Morgan and our entire ESPN crew here at Dodger Stadium in Los Angeles, I'm Charlie Steiner saying good night.
This has been a presentation of ESPN, the worldwide leader in sports. For more, log on to ESPN.com.